My name is Clancy, and I'm an alcoholic. I was really astonished to see Bob Matthews. What are you doing here, Bob? Bob was the first person to invite me out of the country to go talk. I talked up in Canada, God, 40-some years ago. You've gotten awfully old, Bob. I've stayed young, but you should see the painting in my closet. I'm glad to be here tonight. I'm glad to be safe and sane and sober, as I like to say, because I didn't used to be. I have some golden memories of Phoenix, which I'll talk about in a moment, that are embedded deep in my heart. But I grew up in a little town up in northern Wisconsin. I grew up with the kind of a strong religion, Norwegian Lutheran, very tough. And our dropouts became Catholic priests. That's what we were like, you know. But when I was about 15, the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, and that hurt my feelings. I felt I had a calling to go out to the Pacific and kill Japanese. So I got a guy to give me a ride. He didn't give me a ride. I rode along with him from Minneapolis to San Francisco. And I told him I want to go there and kill Japs. I was 15, about this big, and had a face full of pimples, just a nasty little puke. And he said, I don't think you can get in the Marine Corps, kid. That you're 15, you look like you're about 13. He said, but maybe you can get in the Merchant Marine. They'll take it to anybody that's got a warm body now. He said, I'll drop you off the Coast Guard office. I'm going to drop you off the Coast Guard office. Now, I said, I want to be in the Merchant Marine. Fill out this application. I filled it up, put down 16, as he suggested. He said, you're only 16, kid. You have to have your parents' permission. So I took it around the block, got my parents' permission. That afternoon, I was on a load of torpedo warheads going to the South Pacific. And I was too dumb to be frightened. You know, somebody said, that's where the World's Fair was last year. Oh. That's Alcatraz. Oh. That's the Golden Gate Bridge. Oh. And there's nothing after that ever. It just goes on and on. And I was on a ship with a bunch of these guys they couldn't get in the Navy. They were bad guys. They're tough guys. They're old guys. And any other generation, they'd have been pirates. You know, they drank and smoked and talked. And I was in a room with three of them. They called it a cabin. It wasn't a cabin. In Wisconsin, cabins have logs. They talked dirty and drank a lot. And I couldn't believe I just averted my head. And then finally, of course, they've all got black hair. Those are the Catholics I heard about. And these guys would drink whiskey and talk bad. And they all talked about what they'd been doing sexually forever. It just shocked me. I mean, even at the age of 15, I'd had sex in Wisconsin. But I'd been apprehensive, and I'd been afraid, and I'd been alone. And these guys, they were doing it with people. Oh, God. And they drank whiskey every day, and I'd never been in the same room with a bottle of whiskey. One day, a guy came over to my bunk and says, how about you, Junior? You think you're man enough for a little snort? He shoved this bottle in my face, and I thought, I better get over this right now. I was going to tell him, you get that bottle out of my face. I happen to be a Norwegian Lutheran, and we don't drink whiskey, and we hardly ever talk to people that do, so don't ever ask me to drink that filth again. I was just going to tell him that. I said, why do you think you're man enough? And I heard the voice say, goddamn right. I had my first drink of whiskey out of that bottle, and it burned my mouth and my throat and my stomach and my throat and my mouth and his shirt finally. Get the bottle away from the little son of a bitch. To this day, I don't know a feeling that's worse than public humiliation, where people see that you're nothing and you can't do anything about it. I wanted to punch these guys. I couldn't. I thought a couple of days later there was something I could have done, but I'm glad I didn't think it was going to throw me overboard. I could have said, lean over, you. Yeah. Take that. But I wasn't, since I've been in AA for a long time, I've heard 1,000 talks, and they always said, when I held that first drink down, I knew I'd found my answer. Not me. It just made me puke. They took me to Honolulu the next day and bought me a bottle of beer. I didn't like that either. And I didn't ever drink much. I would once in a while sip beer if I had to, but I didn't want to. When I was 17, I went in the Navy, and I don't know if some of you young folks remember, but Japan invaded the United States in the Second World War. They invaded the Aleutian Islands. We had to go up and get them out of there. And by the end of the war, I was in a naval hospital outside of San Francisco. They were sewing me up. The Red Cross had a lot of extra tests they had to use up. So they gave everybody a test, and I've always been great on tests because I read a lot. I remember the guy came in and said, "Clancy, you're in the top 5% of intelligence of the entire United States Navy." And I said, "I know." But what it got for me, it got me a certificate meaningless. But you got to remember, see, I had just finished my sophomore year when I went to San Francisco in high school. Now the war is over, I guess I was supposed to go back and be a junior in high school. There's no way I was ever going to do that. But fortunately, I was able through the VA to use this certificate to wangle me into college. So in the fall of 1946, I went to the University of Wisconsin. I don't know if there's anybody in this room that's old enough to remember 1946, but millions of guys got out of the service all at once. They all had the GI Bill. They could go to school. They'd pay you and buy your books and pay your tuition. You'd sit in freshman English class. There'd be some grizzled old ex-sergeant sitting there next to little honey. "Hi, I just got out of high school. Were you in the war?" "Yeah, do you put out?" A lot of them did, though. I found one that did, and we were married for 64 years. But anyway, I went to college, and in my freshman year, all the veterans would run out and raise hell and drink. And I wanted to be with them, so I'd go out and I started to learn to drink a little bit. And I tried to drink, and all of a sudden it started to taste good. It started to make me feel good. And I guess what I did was cross the invisible line, although I didn't know it. End of my freshman year, I was drinking hearty. And it helped me a lot because it enabled, because I'm basically a rather shy person, or I was. And drinking takes away my shyness. It makes me feel good. And I got well in school. By the end of my senior year, I was editor of the yearbook. I was chief justice of the student court. I was slicker than you could imagine. And I gave the speech on behalf of the senior class at commencement. And then we all shuffled across and got our diplomas, and mine was blank. But I knew it was going to be blank, because in the last semester I had not quite been able to get to English history class at 8 in the morning because it was too early for me to get up. So I had to go to summer school. I was hired to teach journalism in Duluth High School, Duluth Denfield High School. And I had to go to school, and I had got a job in the rubber company balancing white sidewall tires. And I went to 3 hours to class a week, and I'd stop in bars and get drunk afterwards and tell people how that university screwed me around. I did so much for them. I got trophies. I won honors. I did all sorts of things. Here I am. They treat me like a piece of crap. And nobody wanted to hear it anymore. But one night I ran into a girl who was with a traveling book-selling or magazine-selling dodge. She said, "That's an interesting story, but look at you. I just come from work." She said, "You're rather dirty, and your fingernails are dirty, and you unshaven. You don't seem to be the type of person that would win any honors." I said, "I'll show you." We jumped in her car, drove to the campus, where the course was all locked up at 10 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the morning. But I found a little door that had glass panels, and I broke one of the panels and opened the door, and we went in, and she saw the whole case full of my trophies and my pictures. And I don't remember exactly. I drank a lot, but I think she slumped to the floor in awe. And I thought she'd had a flat tire, and I was trying to pump her up. And a policeman's flashlight illuminated us. You talk about passion quenchers. That's right. "What are you doing there?" "Nothing." They arrested me for breaking and entering the nighttime. That's a 5-year bit in the penitentiary in Wisconsin. But the school got to overnight and just changed it to drunk and disorderly. But I had to go to court. I was so sick and hungover and embarrassed. They put my picture in the paper, and the judge was a friend of our family. I was sitting there waiting for court to open, and the guy brought in a box. "Are you Clancy?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Here." There's a box with all my books in it, and a little note on top of the dean saying, "I covered you as long as I could, but I can't cover this when you're expelled." Then I got a telegram from Duluth saying my contract had been canceled on the grounds of moral turpitude. It was not turning into a good morning all in all. And the judge, a friend of our family, I'm so sorry, Judge. He said, Clancy, I regret you're that sorry. Why that, Judge? He says, when people are that sorry, it's been my experience, they're not only sorry for what they've done, but they're sorry for what they're going to do. I said, oh, no, Judge, I've learned my lesson. He was right. And I got married I tried to correct my sins by getting married. And I got a job as a sports writer on a newspaper, which to this day is my favorite job I've ever held. I love sports. I love writing about it. Love to see Arizona State kick the shit out of UCLA tonight. I don't care about that. Wisconsin beat Minnesota. That's what I care about. At any rate, but my wife, I'd married in a moment of weakness. I'd married this Catholic girl because she had won my heart. She had black hair. You never see people like that in the Norwegian Lutheran Church. They're all a bunch of blondes always and blue eyes. And she had dark hair and dark eyes and mysterious. And so we got married, and then she began manifesting the behavior pattern of Catholics, which I did not know anything about, and nobody ever told me. But if there's any little Protestant boys here, and you find yourself in love with a good Catholic girl, and you want to marry her, I want to tell you some news. You are about to become the head of a bigger family than you ever dreamed. I began my career as a national distributor of small Catholics. Just boom. So I had to get better jobs, and I had a flair for writing. So I got a job at a big corporation working in their advertising department, and I did very good. They called me in one day and said, you know, Clancy, you're an excellent writer. Thank you. They said, but we really need you here Mondays, too. And when you come in Tuesday, you smell bad. I want you to do something about it. You'll have to do something about it. I thought, oh, wow. But when I senior year at college, I'd gotten a couple of arrests for disorderly conduct, and guys had told me, why should I have this new thing in town called Alcoholics Anonymous? I said, I'm not an alcoholic. We know that, but maybe you'll ease up a little bit. So I'd gone to my first AA meeting in that little town, and 8 fat guys sitting around a table. I came in, what are you doing here? I thought that's kind of a funny welcome. But I know why it was now, because I was 22, and I looked even younger, and there wasn't anybody in that whole state under 40 in AA at that time. Like some kid coming in tonight, 8 years old, and saying, I think I'm an alcoholic. Oh, do you? I think you have a broken nose. And so it didn't take you to learn. We got some new people here. It doesn't take long to learn about AA. Alcoholics are people who drink too much. They come to AA and admit their problem is alcohol. That makes them feel better. Then they return to God and pray a lot. Then they spend the rest of their life tending one another incessantly. And that may be good for some people. That's not my cup of tea. But in this they called me in. This is another city where I know they had AA. I said to the guy, I played out the veteran card. I said, you know, you're right, Mr. Carson. I know I'm drinking a lot, but I got drinking overseas there when I saw the horror. Well, you go to AA. I said, if you give me a couple of weeks paid leave, I'll get cured and I'll come back. It's a good idea. Because AA was a mysterious place that nobody knew anything about. It's just a place where old drunks went and never came back. Just a funny place. And I went there, and some more fat guys sitting around bragging about their drinking, just dull and boring. I didn't last long. But at least it enabled me to go home to my wife and say, well, Charlotte, I've gone back to Alcoholics Anonymous. Wonderful. Wonderful. What do they want you to do, honey? Well, they want me to taper off. And there wasn't any Al-Anon then to screw it up for everybody. Ever since the birth of Al-Anon, there's never been a moment's rest for any slipper ever, anywhere. No, they want you to taper off! You're supposed to stop completely! We have the steps too, we have a book! I release you, you son of a bitch! But I realized I wasn't going to get healed in 2 weeks by those boobs down there. So I got a job in a different town with a big company. I had good samples. I did that for 10 years. Working in a place till they're about to can me and get another job. And I could always talk my way into it, and I could do a lot of things. And I finally got fired for the last time in Dallas, where I had a big job. Decided to trust me. They should. The guy called me and said, Clancy, you know, you almost cost us the Fritos account last month with your drunkenness. And it almost cost us $10 million. You're fired. I want you to get out of here, clean out your office. I'm going to try to make it my business to see you never work in advertising again. Overreaction. They gave me my severance check, and I started to go home. I thought, I don't want to go home. I'll just get that same old lecture again. And so I stopped and cashed my check and had fun. I'd done that once before in Rockford, Illinois. The only other time I didn't come home with any money after being fired. And my wife had said, well, where's the money? I said, I bought something for the house, honey. She said, what? I said, 3 rounds. She didn't laugh. But I hate to go home. You know, you hate to go home. About a month ago, my dog started barking in the middle of the night, and I trudged out to the front, and there was a guy sitting on the wall in front of our house. I said, what are you doing out here? So I'm going to a lecture. I said, a lecture about what? About alcoholism. I said, are you crazy? Where in Los Angeles is there a lecture about alcoholism at 2 in the morning? At my house. But that's the way it goes, you know. So by the time I got there on Monday, she had moved and sold her furniture and taken the children and left my clothes on the front porch with a note, we can't take any more of this. That's the end of that. They moved somewhere. I don't know where they moved. And I knew I had to get out of Texas because I was just coming back from an unfortunate trip to the state mental hospital where I'd been put there without reason hardly. And I was signed out to my wife, and so I knew she'd probably turn me in. And I remember a guy had asked me about a week before that. He said, I got a car, has to go to Los Angeles. You know anybody who'll drive it for me? I said, no. But that morning I did. I said, yes, I know someone. He said, who? I said, me. He said, I thought you worked at Tracy Locke. Big job. I said, they're a bunch of phonies. I quit. So he gave me a credit card and some money, and away I went. First day I got to El Paso, where I had worked on the faculty of the university there briefly. But where I'm a legend in Juarez, I'm glad to say that. And I went to Juarez, where I'm a legend, and I hid my car in Los Angeles, in El Paso. By midnight, I was standing on the bar of the Chinese palace, singing my little song, Yo soy el maestro de los locos en Chihuahua. And my fans were all going, cabron, cabron. I think that means good in Spanish. And the next day I got in my car drunk and sick and got as far as Phoenix, where I didn't know anybody here, so I hid my car well. And got drunk, and about night, late at night I couldn't find my car. Incidentally, I've not found it yet. And thought I'd look around for a little bit in the morning. But some guy came down the street and said, will you help me find my car, pal? I said, don't bother me. I said, for Christ's sake, help me find my car. He said, don't bother me. And I grabbed by the lapel, bad habit. I said, come on, what's wrong with you? He said, you should have done. They took out his badge. He said, you're under arrest. Oh. Took me downtown, put me in the drunk tank up in the 3rd floor of the jail at that time. He said, I'm going to cool you off, boy. You don't cool off in the 3rd floor of that drunk tank, I'll tell you. There's no air conditioning at that time. I finally got to sleep. I woke up in the middle of the night. I was so sick. God, I had vomit down. I thought it was the toilet, somebody's bed. But there's nobody in it. How are you going to tell, you know? But then I laid down. I'm sure you've done this after you vomit. There's something so nice about a cool tile. You just went to sleep, and this guy, goof, came back from wherever he was. Found his bed full of vomit, this drunken guy. He said, you drunk son of a bitch! I don't think he meant to do it. He kicked my front teeth out. And I didn't say anything. I didn't want to make trouble. But the next morning I got out, and my mouth was bleeding. My clothes were full of blood and vomit, and my coat was torn on my suit. There's one other thing I'd learned in those years of drinking, and you may want to remember this. When you really get sick and look bad and nobody wants anything to do with you, there's one place you're always welcome. Try to find an AA club. It's the only place in the world where the worse you look, the better they like it. Welcome. This one's mine, Jim. So I went to something called the Arid Club and hustled some old lady for $20 ostensibly for a 12-step house, but then I ran downtown, caught a bus to Los Angeles, got some money from a guy I used to know there, and he was a big star now, and I spent my money. I went back to try to get more, and he said, no, I called Dallas. You didn't have a car accident like you said. You're a bum. And he said, come back to the station. He was a big TV star. He said, come back to the station tonight, back at Hollywood Boulevard there now. Come out at 9 o'clock, and I'll see what I'll do. I was out there at 8:30 in the rain. He came out finally and said, Clancy, you make us all sick. He threw a $5 bill that tousled down in the mud puddle, and I crawled out, and I thought, oh, I really fooled him. And the next night I was in an all-night theater on Skid Row. I don't know if you have all-night theaters here or not, but they have in big cities on Skid Row. What they are, they're kind of run-down theaters, and they charge about 35 or 40 cents for a ticket. And they're used primarily for bums sleeping all night long to get out of the weather. And I was in there sleeping. I wasn't a bum, but I was in there. And they don't really run all night. 5 o'clock in the morning. All right, you bums, everybody up! They start with a hose washing you down. So you stagger out, and it's still raining. I didn't know what to do. The guy said, do you want to sell a pint of blood? I said, Jesus, do I ever. And we walked about 8 blocks up the street to a blood bank, and we went in and took a drop of blood out of our ear, and we sat down, waited. And the guy came out and said, who is the MS blood here? I said, I am. He said, you don't have enough iron in your blood to sell blood here. Sorry, come back another time. I said, Jesus, I'm so sick. I got to have something, please. He said, can't help you. Now, down here about 4 blocks, there's a place designed for bums like you. It's called the Midnight Mission. Go down there and get breakfast. Maybe you'll feel better. I went down in the rain to the Midnight Mission. I'd like some breakfast, please. God just got done serving. Sorry. What? Are you kidding? I'm sick. I got to have something. He said, come back at noon. We'll give you a big lunch. I can't wait till noon. And I grabbed him by the lapel. Bad habit of mine. I come on, for Christ's sake. And 2 guys stepped over, each unpeeled one hand and threw me out the door. And don't come back, you son of a bitch. I tried to say, I'm not a son of a bitch. 3 years ago, I was on the faculty of the University of Texas. Ads that I wrote, the L.C. Number ads for the boarding company, big time, appeared in the New Yorker and Saving Post, all the big magazines were running that very weekend. I've had my picture in the New York Times showing my achievements when I was really on an up move. But it's really hard to explain these things in midair. I started outside that little damn old place in the rain. I didn't know what to do. I thought, how can this be happening to me? A week ago, I was a big shot, and here I'm getting thrown out of a mission by a bunch of bums. If some old guy would come to me that morning and said, you know, Slim, you're dying. You're down to 120-some pounds. You've lost your wife and children. You never see them again. You've lost your career. One time they called you a boy genius. You can't get a job washing dishes. Look at you. You're filthy. You've lost all your money, all your clothing, all your IDs in that damn car in Phoenix that you lost over there. Your little mother up in Wisconsin is no longer allowed to accept phone calls from you because your stepfather's so tired of watching you play on her emotions. So she'll go down to her tiny little bank account, take a few more dollars and send to her little boy to help him. He'd rather have her think you're dead. And he said, now you've been in and out of AA all over the country for almost 10 years. Every time you get in a jam, you go to AA and say that, God, these people are stupid. Stupid little steps and stupid little traditions and stupid little slogans and just stupid little stories. And when someone tells a tedious story about their stupid drink, we say, oh, wonderful, wonderful. God, I'd hate to be like that. And when the heat's off, I leave. He said, but now you're dying. He might have said, why don't you go back to AA one more time and admit you're an alcoholic? and see what happens. And if I were in the mood to be honest, I'd tell him, pal, I wish I were an alcoholic. I really do. I don't like to be like this. I wish I was so stupid enough to go into some place and hear someone talk about how drunk they got. That would somehow make me feel better, but it doesn't. It's a tedious, lonely, sad life. I know I'm not an alcoholic. One thing I heard in AA, alcoholics can't stop drinking. Once they start drinking, boy, they're really gone. I've stopped drinking a lot of times, and I can do it with the heat's on. The problem is after I stop drinking, I do pretty well for a little while. But then it's almost as though somebody sneaks into my bedroom in the middle of the night and puts an invisible spring in my gut. And the next day they start to tighten it. And it doesn't come out as, I need a drink. It comes out as a little restlessness, a little irritability. Oh, shut up! A little resentment, being treated like a child by these inferiors. And it gets worse by worse. And at one time in the mid-1950s, I determined to break that habit, and I spent almost $10,000 in psychoanalysis. I read their books, and I took their pills, and I went to their meetings, and that doesn't stop me from drinking. I'll tell you what stops me from drinking. When it gets so bad, you goddamn can't take it anymore. Yeah. But then you say, I'll try to watch it this time. Never knowing you can't and you won't. But I thought that made me not an alcoholic. But nobody came up to me that morning. I finally said to some guy, where's an AA club around here? Well, there's nothing downtown. You have to go out to Wilshire and Fairfax. I said, where the hell is that? So we go up this hill to Hill Street, cut over to Wilshire, walk west till you come to Fairfax. That doesn't sound bad, does it? I did that 7.5 miles in the rain. I got to this club, and geez, I was just about dead. And then I didn't almost go in, because one of these goofy AA was in the doorway saying, welcome home, son. Oh, shit. But I went in, I had no knowledge that would be my sobriety day. Didn't want it to be. It was Halloween, 1958. I didn't know it was Halloween. If I'd known it was Halloween, I'd gone to a party and won a prize for my costume. And I often thought about that. What in the world would make me stay sober? I knew all about AA when I walked in that door. I know as much as I know about it now, I guess. But I fell into the hands, somehow. The guy, a movie actor, I'd seen the movies, but I thought he was very wealthy. And I was going to see if he wanted to share his wealth with a new sponsee. And he didn't. But I asked him, I said, Bob, I really admire your program. I was living in the back seat of an abandoned car in the AA club parking lot. I looked terrible. I smelled terrible. Like when the club people would say, oh, keep your newcomer, here he comes again. You know. And I said, Bob, I really admire your program. Would you be my sponsor? He said, all right, but I want you to tell you. Oh, sure, Bob. And shortly thereafter, he wasn't a movie star at all. He'd been in 2 or 3 movies, cameos, and I'd seen all of them, so I thought he was a movie star. But he wasn't. I've been in more movies in the last few years than he ever saw, but I didn't know that then. And they said he wasn't a very good actor, but he was a good actor because he acted well in meetings, and that took a lot of acting for him. He was a right-wing fascist AA pig of the worst sort. Just, do this, do that. I thought, why am I taking this crip from that dunderhead? Because he was my only meal ticket out of there. What he would do sometimes, he'd come down and pick me up for the club and buy me some soup or something I could chew, and scrambled eggs sometimes, and we'd go off to where he was talking, and on the way he'd talk to me both ways, and I got tired of listening to his philosophy. But one night we went to a Brentwood meeting, which was the biggest meeting in town at that time, and before the meeting a guy got up, he said, I was here about 11 months ago, and I was having a tough time. And I told you folks, some of you folks about it, and you pointed out to me that I was drinking too much. It never struck me. I've always tried to be a drinker. I've never drank too much. And I tried stopping drinking, and my life has all changed. Getting along well with my family, doing well in the job, Just get back and say thank you. I haven't been to your meetings because I don't need to drink. Yeah. And on the way home, I noticed after the meeting, Bob pounced on him, said, "Don't come around here again. We don't want you around here. We don't need your type." I thought, God, that's a strange reaction. On the way home, I said, "Bob, how come you pounced on that dumb kid?" He said, "Because he's got an alcohol problem." I said, "Bob, don't get angry, but isn't AA designed for people with alcohol problems?" He said, "Nah, people with alcohol problems don't need AA." I said, "Really? What do they need, Bob?" They need to stop drinking and clean up their act. When they're offered a drink, say no thank you. That's all. I said, "That doesn't work. I've been trying that for 10 years. That doesn't work, Bob." He said, "I guess you don't have an alcohol problem." "Oh? What do you think I have, Bob?" He said, "You may have what I have and all the members of AA have, a thing that looks like an alcohol problem, but it isn't. Something called alcoholism." I said, "Oh, Jesus, Bob. Don't play word games with me. I'm smarter than anybody you know." "Shut up," he said. And he gave about a 3-hour harangue, most of which I was able to blot out before I went insane. But in that talk, although I never did know it then or thereafter, he changed my life. He said, "Kid, just think of it this way. Alcohol problems look and act like drink alcoholic problems. They drink too much, they have some problems with it, they decide to quit, and they quit, or they cut down. You and I decide to quit or decide to cut down means nothing. They find sobriety pleasant. We find sobriety unbearable. There's the difference. If alcohol were our problem, we'd all be home free. We just quit. But that's not the case." He said, "Alcoholics are people who get an unnatural reaction to alcohol." Oh, yes, I know. It sets up the phenomenon of craving. Then they drink till they go crazy. He said, "That's podium talk." He said, if this were Johnny Walker, this cup of coffee, and I take a big drink, the immediate reaction would be to alter my perception of reality. Make it just a little bit softer, a little more comfortable." Hi. And if sometimes when I have another couple drinks, I become clever and cute and glib. They don't know it, but I know it. Sometimes when I've drunk a lot, I may saunter over to the bar and say things like, "You with anyone, Granny?" Now, I did a lot of drinking in bars, nearly all of my drinking, and I picked up a lot of women in bars. I'm not proud of it, but I did. But I'll tell you one thing I'm proud of. I never went to bed with an ugly woman. I woke up with a lot of them. "Who are you and where's that girl I brought home last night?" I said, "Bob, I understand that philosophy. I've done that, but a lot of times, why do these old drunks that go to these meetings all they sitting around is talking about how much they drank and how terrible it was. If it's so goddamn terrible, why do they keep drinking?" He says, "It's not terrible. You didn't hear it right, or they weren't saying it right. Alcohol has to do something. The unnatural reaction it has for you must almost instantly do something special for you that it doesn't do for 90% of the people who drink alcohol. It must change your perception of reality and put you in the middle of it feeling good." But it does that, Bob. That's why I drink it. I determined to drink 2 drinks. Why do I wind up drunk all the time? So that's what you got to remember, kid. When you and I take 2 drinks, or 1 drink for that matter, it's a different person who's here. The person wanted to have only 2 drinks left some time ago. Shit, baby, let's go! I forgot that I only wanted 2 drinks somehow. And the next morning I wake up and think, God, what happened? Why didn't I stop? Because you can't. The whole purpose of alcohol is to make myself a different person in this world. Takes people like me and makes them fit in and cute and clever and get along with people. Instead, if I don't have it, I have to retire to being shy and awkward and don't fit in very well, and I feel different. And which would you rather feel like? I said to Bob, well, there's a girl in our group who said she was sober, and she got drunk and got sober again. Why would she do that? He said, that's the other part of it, kid. He said, alcohol does something so nice for us that eventually it makes sobriety unbearable. The curse of alcoholism is that society, your sobriety will always become unbearable, and you must drink. Oh, Jesus, I never knew that. He told me that in 1958. I said, Bob, that's the story of my life for the last 10 years. But even my problem really isn't alcohol, it's all these damn feelings. He said, there's a name for people like you. I hated to ask him what it was because he was so profane. And what could that be, Bob? He said, I believe you're an alcoholic. I said, how could I be an alcoholic? My number one problem is not alcohol. He said, alcoholics aren't people whose number one problem is alcohol. Alcoholics are people whose number one answer is alcohol. Yeah. If it's your answer, you'll have a problem as long as you live. I thought, Jesus. I thought, what if he's right? I don't believe he can be, but it seemed like it. I'll try to pretend I'm an alcoholic for a while, just do what he says, even though it's stupid. And I did, and a couple weeks ago I celebrated 55 years of sobriety. And the only therapy I've had is Alcoholics Anonymous. And when I got out of that nut house in Texas, they told me I'd have to take strong antidepressants for the rest of my life because my emotions were so garbled. What am I doing here? But the greatest gift I ever got was to discover that I was an alcoholic. It took me a while to do it. And he said, we're going to take the steps now. I said, I can't take the steps. I can't return to God. In the mid-1950s, my son died when I was in jail one night, and I swore I hated God. You son of a bitch! You took my little boy that never committed a sin and killed him to punish me. Screw you, God! You'll get me in hell, but you won't get me before that. So I never wanted to be around God. He said, fortunately, kid, look at the steps. He doesn't ask you to return to God. He says, we came to believe. We never ask you to go back to any old superstitious, frightening belief. We ask you to try to come to believe in something. Can't you believe in a loving God? I said, no. He said, do you like AA? And I said, well, I like it better than I used to, but not much. He said, do you think I'm doing better than you are? Of course you are, Bob. He said, congratulations. I'm your new higher power. And I could accept that because he was trying to help me. So I did things that he asked me to do, much as I hated it, because I thought he was stupid. I guess I took a second step, and I guess I took a third step when I began doing what he told me to do. Because that's what the third step is. They're all very simple, really. But since I've been sober, I've gone to conventions where they had people discuss what the steps really mean. Let's have a seminar on the steps. They mean what they say, goddammit. That's what they mean. That's what they say. The trouble is we're all so complex, we have to be around here a while and dumb down to their limits so it can help us. And I, over the period, I took a group of steps and wrote an inventory one night when I got fired as a dishwasher at the Gaiety Delicatessen, which wasn't my fault. I was washing dishes, and I noticed the busboys were bringing in more dishes than the waitresses were taking out, as far as I could tell, which meant they were getting them in other restaurants to humiliate me because I was an Anglo. And I wrote that. I went back to the club that night. Everybody had gone home except the manager. I said, God, I lost my job. I was 6 months sober. I got to hold a job as a dishwasher. These other jerks got sober than I did. They got jobs. They got girlfriends. They got nothing. And I might as well be drunk. The manager said, you're right. That's not the right answer. The answer is, let me talk you out of it. Why do you say that, Sullivan? He said, well, in this club there's about 180 people who don't like you at all. They wish you'd get drunk and die or go away. There's about 8 people who like you, and they have to defend you every day. If you got drunk, you'd make those 180 people feel happy. Those 8 people might feel bad, but what do you care? I said, no! I'll show them. I won't get drunk. I'll screw them. So that night I took an inventory. I wrote an inventory. Put down stuff I never even thought I'd ever tell anybody. I wouldn't tell my psychiatrist that, I'll tell you. The guy said, why don't you tell your psychiatrist these things? Because when you're paying that kind of money, you can't risk rejection. That's why I don't pay that. You did what, sir? Get out of my office. But wash off that chair, will you? And my sponsor took me for a ride along the ocean with a flashlight, and I read this to him. Oh, I was just sick because oh God, I forget how bad it was. I'm not even a good bad guy. I'm a sneak and a thief, and I cheat people, and I use people, and not even a decent car stealing or a hold up, just, yeah. And I got done. He's going to make me walk 40 miles back to Los Angeles. That's all about. He leaned over and said, are you done now? He said, that's the best thing you've done since you got sober, kid. And I said, thought it was. But my sponsor had me make amends to people I hate. That's a difficult. I think of all the steps, though, there are 3 or 4 that are really critical. One is the first step. That's the most critical. We all say we're alcoholics, but it takes a long time to come to believe it deep in your gut. And to write an inventory is tough because you got to bury your soul a little bit. And to make amends to people that you hate, that's a tough one, kind of. And continue on and make more amends and so on. And try to help people, even though it's inconvenient and you don't like them. Try to help them the best you can. One of the great things I discovered in AA in the 11th step, something I never dreamed about. It's probably the only thing I've not violated in AA, one time or another. It says, praying only for knowledge of His will for me and the power to carry it out. I've always been, you get me out of this, God, now. I'll go to church and I'll get me out of this and be my wife and I'll be a better husband. And not once since 1950 have I ever asked God in a prayer for anything except the knowledge of His will for me and the power to carry it out. And I still say that same prayer at night, every night. Thanks for getting me sober today and help me know a little bit more about your will for me so I know what the hell to do, the power to carry it out. And because I'll tell you a secret. I've been sober probably longer than anybody in the room. And I'll tell you something, no matter how long you stay sober, and how hard you work at it, and how sincere you become, you never rise above human being. And human beings are flawed, and none of us are wonderful or perfect. We like to say we are. So sincerity is much easier talked about in the podium than it is to do in the world, I'll tell you. But little by little, I did a little better. After I took my inventory, I worked a little closer with Bob because I was a little more dependent on him. I got little jobs here and there. I finally held a job in an advertising agency. But pretty soon I was brought in, another guy I never brought in Hollywood, and we created the #1 hard rock station in the world, something called Boss Radio. And I was 5 years sober, the same wife and all those children, heard the crinkle of green in my wallet all the way to Dallas, leaped out of their post office box, rushed to my side, attached themselves to me like a group of chiggers. 9 months and 10 seconds later, another Catholic hit the street. Thank God it was a little boy that I lost him. I cried. Then somebody gave me a book on the rhythm system, which is a Catholic version of birth control, I guess. And I read that, and we haven't had any more children. Some nights I've had to say, sorry, dear, I've got a headache. And it's all been very well, and my career went very well. By the time I was 15 years sober, my kids were all doing well, all starting off to college. Some of them, they're all graduated now. And I lived in a big house out by the ocean. and I sponsored a lot of people. And I was very active in AA, traveling around talking and things. And I discovered somewhere along the line, not then, but there before that, somehow gathered in my head, the purpose of AA. If you're new, you might want to remember this. Because what's the goal of it all? To get drier and drier and drier? Christ, I'm 55 years dry. I may burst into flame up here. The purpose of AA, it turns out, is something so simple that I never would have guessed it. It is to very slowly do what alcohol did fast. To change my perception of reality. To enable me to live in the world with some degree of self-confidence and self-worth, and feel that I have the ability to fit in when I have to. It's a great feeling, and it comes and goes sometimes. When I was 15 years sober, it came, and in the moment of feeling good, one day I found myself leaving my job in Beverly Hills that I'd been working on as a marketing director in a big publishing firm. And for the last 40 years, I've run the Skid Row mission that threw me out in 1958. And people say, why would you give up your career to run that damn mission? There's no good answer. Well, there's such a significant decrease in salary, I couldn't turn it down. Yesterday morning, I got up early and went to work through Beverly Hills from my home out by the ocean, Skid Row, put my car underneath the buildings so no one will steal it, walked around the mission to see who had survived the night without smashing their head into the sidewalk in convulsions, or if any crack cocaine predators had killed anybody in order to get money. I went in and spent the day with my staff, and we worked on various ways to get people off the street. It's almost impossible on Skid Row to get people off the street because this isn't a financial thing. It's a psychological thing. They have lost the ability to cope with conflict. It makes it very, very difficult. So you just get them going kind of good. I don't want it. Yeah. But we got a few. My Wednesday night meeting last week, the first 5 birthdays were young guys who came off the booze on Skid Row on the midnight mission. And I haven't become a wonderful person at all, but the steps have made some changes in me. I know one of the things a guy told me one time, I thought was silly. He said, when you begin to drink and it works for you, your maturing process stops. So by the time you stop drinking, you kind of go back to the emotions that when you can start drinking. In other words, you wind up with a grown-up body and a grown-up brain and a grown-up ability to choose and judge, all at the intermittent call of childish emotions. And I'm sure there isn't a person in this room that doesn't know that, the childish emotions. They talk about how it's all, love is wonderful, A is wonderful. It's all very nice, but let somebody cross me. Then you give them the ultimate curse. It's a funny thing. I'm sure there isn't a person in this room who didn't fight the term alcoholic as long as they could. But I'm not really an alcoholic, I tell you. My case is different. But after you're sober a while, what's the worst thing you can say about someone? I don't even think that son of a bitch is alcoholic. But that's just the way we are. The nature of AA is such that's designed you to live in the world comfortably. About last year, I was talking up in Maine, or Massachusetts, and the Sunday afternoon speaker I was listening to is a guy who sponsored him, Bob, from Las Vegas. And he's talking about carrying the 10th step a little bit further, how we continue to admit we're wrong, but look back over your life. Look at all the people you screwed along the way and hurt, and maybe didn't formally make amends to them, maybe like someone you're married to or your children or something. I said, on the plane, I thought, that's right, my wife went through terrible years. And I came home and she was sleeping. I wrote a funny note on the table, admitting my sins. And I went to bed, and I got back early the next morning, and she was still sleeping, so I went to work, left a note there. I got a call about an hour later. She had suddenly died. I rushed home, and my daughter was saying, I was having a cup of coffee with Mother, and she was holding this note you left her and laughing, and took a sip of coffee and shut her eyes and just never opened them again. I thought, God, I'm so glad I wrote that note. I took the heat off like you can't believe. Because that's what AA does. It teaches you to do things not only because they're the right thing to do, but so you never have to look back and think, God, I should have done that. Good lesson. So tonight, I'm glad to be here, safe and sane and sober. And all of my children are doing pretty well. I have a grandson here in Phoenix, going to be married soon. I'm trying to come down to his wedding. Only one of my children has turned out bad. I hate to talk about that. My oldest daughter has become a judge. We were so praying for a defense attorney, but no. She was home a few years ago at Christmas and said, remember little girls, when we were little girls, Daddy, you'd be so testy and you'd send us to our room and holler at us? I said, sure, honey, but you know why. She said, yes, I know why. But when you come to Albuquerque, I'm going to send you to a little room. When I leave here, I'm not going to New Mexico, I'll tell you that. I'm going west. And anyway, I'm glad to be here safe and sane and sober. If you're new tonight, remember, everybody here knows how you feel, has felt that way. Afraid you don't quite fit in, and what's all this crap, who are all these dumbbells? But you have to get through that. You have to get a sponsor you can trust, that you can talk to. And when he tells you something, you try to do it, no matter what your head tells you. And little by little, the goal is not that you're going to become wonderful, because none of us ever do, really. But you're going to live in a world that's comfortable. Can you imagine such a thing? Live in a world that's comfortable. And go to bed at night and go to sleep. Wake up in the morning, feel pretty good. It's worth everything it took. Thank you.